Welcome to Becoming is Messy, where we dive deep into the journey of survival, transformation, and everything in between. I'm your host, Megan Dawson, here to share the honest, unfiltered stories behind my own process of becoming. Life isn't a pretty and perfect straight line, and neither is becoming the person we're meant to be. Here, we embrace the ups, the downs, all the beautiful, chaotic, messy moments that shape who we are. Whether you're in the thick of change or reflecting on past transformations, this space is for real conversations about what it means to grow, stumble, and rise again. So get comfy, settle in, and let's get messy. I had so much fun with today's guest. Someone who just gets it. Someone who knows what it means to navigate life's unexpected turns with heart, humor, and purpose. Cynthia Campbell is not just a brilliant mind in the world of financial empowerment. She's a woman with a story, a leader who lifts others up, and the kind of person who makes you feel seen, heard, and inspired just by being in her presence. And here's what's been so exciting for me. Cynthia recently launched her own business, Soul Path Leadership, stepping boldly into entrepreneurship just as I have. She's quickly becoming one of my go-to peers on what doesn't have to feel like a solo business adventure. We're both out here building something meaningful, taking big leaps, and cheering each other on along the way. This conversation isn't just about her expertise. It's about the courage it takes to start, the lessons we're learning in real time, and the power of women supporting women as we rise. Please join Cynthia and me for Leading with Soul, the Sisterhood of Authentic Leadership. Hi, Cynthia. Welcome
Hello.
to Becoming is Messy. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Megan.
I've just so loved the last few weeks having the soul sister out in the world. Also, newly with your own entrepreneurial journey, starting off yourself. It's been so fun having somebody that I can partner with, reach out to, and kind of commiserate with a little bit. Excited to bring some of the discussions we've been having over the last few weeks in our entrepreneurial early journeys and bringing that to the listeners of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I have to just echo that right back to you because doing your own thing can be a little scary. And then when you find somebody in your circle, so to speak, who's doing the same thing, one of two things can happen, right? Either those competition heckles come up like, hey, what is she doing? Or you could dive in and be collaborative and talk about how is this journey and what's going on with you and what's your differentiator. And I just love that about you, Megan, that you walk your talk and you are a collaborative person and always just wanting to learn and teach and work together. So I am so glad we are on this journey about the same time and learning the same things. This has been on my calendar and I've been super excited. So thank you.
So
Absolutely.
Very cool to be able to highlight the work you're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
As I learned more about the launch of your business and what your focus is, I just love the website and the messaging on there. There was a quote that I saw on your page, and I'm just going to share it because it really resonated with me. And that quote is, "Step into your power, start your journey, lead with soul. The next evolution of leadership starts within." Help us set the stage for our conversation today. If stepping into your power had a soundtrack, what song would be playing?
Wow. I have a couple fun answers to that, but I will just be sincere to say that it's probably Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys because my personality is very fiery, right? I have a real fire inside of me. My energy is high. If you know about Ayurveda, I'm a Pitta personality, that's the fire element. I don't know all the lyrics, and I certainly will not sing for your audience, I promise. One time when I was living in Madison, where we met, I was laying on my couch, windows open, and there were these two young girls riding their bikes in my neighborhood, and they were singing this song as they were going around the block. And it just reminded me of that feeling of, I can do anything, I can rise. Things happen, we fall, but that passion to rise and get back up. So when I hear that song, it's definitely one of the many that resonate with me for sure. When people ask what to play when you're coming on a stage, I often pick that one because I like to set audiences on fire.
I really resonate with that and really excited for you to help set us on fire today with where we're going to take this conversation. Every becoming story has its own messy path. Help our listeners understand a little bit about the twists and turns that have helped shape who you are today.
I've always been somebody who journaled, and my dad passed away when I was 9, juvenile diabetes. Actually, I just turned 10. And that was one of the deciding things in my life before dad died and after dad died. And being the kid whose dad died was a different setup and just a different way to start a young journey and other things that had happened along that path. I'll say to you, my childhood and fast forward into my jobs always being around money, probably because rooted in a little insecurity about that in that childhood, but selling trading systems to traders, to working for credit unions, to working for coaching firms that serve credit unions, to think tanks for credit unions, all of that. When I look back and see, I didn't understand it at the time why that boss did that or said that, why I got assigned that project, why, all the whys. But then looking back through my journals, I can take a highlighter and just highlight all the things that were good that happened that led me to where I am, from bosses challenging my very fiery personality to
Yes.
all the challenges of projects and managing people.
I so relate to the power in looking back and seeing the way that everything that's happened in my life has added up to the me in this moment. It didn't always make sense, but it's so powerful to recognize the ups and the downs all add up to equate to where I'm meant to be. I feel like the downs are no longer as hard as they used to be because I trust that they are giving me what I need in the moment to form who I need to be going forward.
I know you're interviewing me, but can I push on that a little bit
Yeah.
more? Because how does your audience stay in that moment? Because when we look backwards, we get that led to this, but then we're in the moment and we're being challenged and the rug's being taken out from under us, or so it feels. How do we trust the story?
Yes, great question. And for me, it's really been about sitting with my feelings, and so when I have that sense that the rug's been pulled out, instead of trying to rush through that, instead of trying to kind of numb the feelings, really now it's feeling all the hard feels. It's trusting my body in those moments to be able to give it what it needs. And a lot of times for me, that looks like some extra naps, a lot of walks and time to meditate to really feel what I need to feel and find kind of my intuition. Sometimes a little bit of a funk could look like a few days. Sometimes it could be a few weeks. I feel like it happens a lot in fall, where I feel like, autumn is a time for me where it's like I'm a little bit of a hibernator and I have to take all those feelings and kind of let them point me to where I'm going next and trust in that.
That's awesome. Again, I've been listening to your podcast and where we resonate. Like yesterday, I do a lot of breathing exercises and I
Yeah.
have a massage table that I was gifted. Thank you, universe. I have set up and I lay on it. It has a heating pad. I have a little space heater. I get the room warm and I will just go into my breath. I'll put music on that's
Yep.
different vibration. And I just escape from the world for 15 minutes and just go
Exactly.
about it. I think people have to just try it
Yes.
before you
Yes.
judge it because the reset of the nervous system is amazing. And so thank you for all those suggestions. I'm with you on those.
While taking care of our nervous systems, we also launched our own businesses in the midst of this wild ride of life. I'm curious, just with where you're at in that journey, what has surprised you most so far in this very early phase of launching Soul Path Leadership?
I'd have to say support from likely characters and unlikely people who are entrepreneurs that understand the path, understand the boldness that it takes to do it, especially I might say at my age or whatever at this path in my journey. But I'm a late bloomer. And it took me a minute to get here. If I look at my corporate career, again, your first question, looking backwards, I've always been a high performer, right? But always had a fear of launching out on my own, a fear. And that word fear, I hate that word fear. I try to root it out, knowing for a minute, when I say a minute, I mean like a couple years, that I should probably be doing my own thing, but not doing it. And I will have to say that my partner, Troy, has given me a lot of courage in that arena. He's done his own thing. He understands what that's about. And he saw things in me and he'd scratch his head and say, why aren't you doing something different? And it gave me courage. Sometimes you need other people to show you or tell you and point things out.
Sometimes it is easy to get in the trap of comparison to peers and other leaders in your space. I'm curious, as you've made this shift and launched your business, do you have a personal lesson that's helped you to stay true to your individual path?
Yeah, some people being really honest about thinking that I might be crazy. You have to definitely be true to having a conviction about what you want to do. And how did I get to that point? Looking at my own leadership, again, being high performance, ROIs, check. 5 on performance reviews, check. Right? KPIs, all the acronyms, check. But when I look back and I see who did I love being led by, the list gets a little bit slimmer, right?
Yes,
Leaving names
yes.
out. But,
Yeah.
just thinking about who was really present with me, a strategy that was kind of embodied in them. It wasn't acting like a leader. They just were. And it was because they knew who they were, which is key first, right? Before you can lead other people. And it was that quote you used from my website that it starts with leaders doing that work. And I started looking back to your other point and highlighting all the leaders in my life, whether it's career, academic, whatever, and what did they have in common? It was really knowing themselves. And then the path from where I sat seemed easy, quote unquote, for them.
Yeah.
Surely it wasn't, but it just, being centered themselves seemed to make a big difference in my perception of their leadership, how I felt led, and then in turn, how I led other people. Now I'm trying to get that together around how to coach other people.
Walk us through a little bit of the key components of that framework that have now been kind of born out of all that you just shared.
Well, thank you. Honestly, it started when I've been a financial coach for a lot of years, like 20. And in my job at the nonprofit where I was COO, I developed coaching methods and systems around coaching. And yes, it's about money, which is different than career. However, talking to people about money is dangerous, right? It includes shame and guilt and shoulda, couldas, and all sorts of things around it. And learning to talk to people about things that have those kind of emotional impacts on them was something that I really wanted to take forward into this, because it was there that I learned how to really listen to people, not just their words, but how they were saying them, to tone, loud tones, the angry tones, the pace that which they talked, even the things that they didn't say, right? Learning how to really listen to them. And as coaches, it might be 20,000 people or whatever, right? That's not what coaching is about, right? Coaching's about leading people back to themselves. What they know inside is the right money decision, or they don't need me wagging a finger about money or anything. They need just sometimes help lighting that path, right, to back to them. And so that's really what I have brought my recent path of coaching to this method. And being over HR during the pandemic taught me that people, I'm going to use your word, messy. People are messy. And so all these like packaged programs, it doesn't always work, right? So
I have yet to meet somebody that hasn't had a messy journey. I've met people that would say they haven't, but once you really dig in, I feel like everybody has some messiness to their journey. So I love when you talk about aligning back to who you really are, alignment back to your true self. I've found power in part of that alignment back to your true self is acknowledging the messy parts of yourself. For me, it is a critical part of my practice. Beyond that, for you, when you think of a leader aligning back to their true self, how else does that show up? What does that look like in your experience?
I think that leaders in business, they are so quick to have a vision and a plan and a mission and core values for the business. But when we talk with each other at these conferences and maybe we drill down on each other and ask, what are your core values, Megan, right? What is your vision? Because I wonder if sometimes it hasn't been co-opted for the vision of the corporations or whatever. And that's great. We love our jobs, we serve and all of that. But did what we set out to do or be or become get sidetracked by the system or the format or the money or the whatever, the prestige, the ego, whatever that goes along with it? They can both go together, right? You could climb a lot because you have to be super mindful about it as you climb. And I think that there's a place for this kind of coaching that you and I are focused on, right? Of really looking at the inside of things and how that impacts leadership. When I was in HR, I saw a lot of people getting in their own way. I'm sure I did. I'm sure every HR director out there who's ever managed me is probably like doing a face plant right now. You alluded to that shadow self, right?
Yes.
That shadow work, that's doing the work.
The thought I had as you were sharing that disconnect when you're working and you're not checking in with whether or not the work you're doing aligns with your own core values. When I look back in my past career, I see the times when I was maybe faltering the most at work, at times when I was dreading going to work on Mondays, because most of my career, I really loved the work I did. I feel so fortunate for my corporate career. It's been a really special space and it's transformed me into the leader I am today. I'm super grateful for it. There's just periods of time when I was dreading to go to work on Monday. I was tired in the afternoons, maybe a little bit grumpy or defensive. When I look at those times, there was a misalignment to my core values in some way.
And it's okay because it can easily be adjusted if we're tuned in. You asked
Right.
about my method. I do have a method. It's the aligned method. The first one is attunement. You have to be tuned into what's going on with you. Look at the leaders and, like you, so grateful for all the places my path has stopped me and had these leaders in my path that showed me the way or showed me not the way, either way, right?
Yeah.
And we know the research on that. And so all the more reason to be talking about these things and to be working towards being the present leader that leads messy people, because that's the only kind of people there are.
Yes, amen to that. I love an aspect of your aligned coaching method. The fact that you blend science frameworks and soul-centered practices, I find very powerful. I'm curious, from your vantage point, why was it so important to incorporate both into your approach?
I've always been a fan of ancient things, of belief systems in particular. So I've been a studier of belief systems for a long time. Every world religion, or just even like MLM marketing. I will study why people believe something so severely. They get their convictions that drive lives of deep practice or deep success. And I just love belief systems. So that takes me back to a lot of ancient literature. And it turns out that people have been the same for a long time, Megan.
Yeah,
We've had the same stuff, this has been an ongoing struggle. It's the human condition. It is not new. There's a lot of new methodologies out there. When I read them, like diets, are all great. They're wonderful because if you work it, it works, right? Just like diets or whatever. But I am drawn to the ancient wisdom because I love feeling that people thousands of years ago have the same problems I have right now. And they philosophized, is that a word, about them. They talked about them, pontificated, they visited with people about it, and they went deep. Or at least from where I sit now, it feels like they did, because that's what got recorded. That's why I'm drawn to it, because it feels deep. It doesn't feel like 12 easy steps to blah, 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 that we can chat GPT or something like that. I want more soul, less small talk, more soul talk.
You and I have been in a lot of the same spaces. A lot of the leaders that we've worked with operate from the head, metrics, KPI, strategy. You even alluded to that earlier. And so when you do bring forth wanting to bring soul into the conversation, how do you approach overcoming that to help people understand the importance of soul when we're so collectively used to being logic-driven leaders?
Because the first question would be, show me the KPIs on that soul.
Exactly, right?
And maybe I have a different approach, which is like no approach at all, because it wouldn't be my people, right? If I have to convince you to pay attention to your soul, then I'm probably not the coach for you. If I needed to do something like that, I think that because of the human condition, we will all ebb and flow. We will have mountains and we'll have peaks. And messaging about getting back to yourself tends to resonate when you're in the peak or in the fork of two roads, this way or that way, in the transition, right? That's when we tend to look outside of ourselves. And that's important too. As Americans, we tend to always look out there. Somebody else has the answer. Where's the pill? Where's the 12-step plan? Who's got the advice? Who's my guru? And I might show you that the guru is you. That's what I'm trying to get at. And if I have to sell you on that, I guess keep going, because I will rather work with the next person who is willing to be open to understanding that versus forcing you.
This comes back to conversations we've had on abundance and recognizing that some people are our
Yes.
people, some people aren't a right fit. People that have a little bit of that openness and
Sure.
willingness, and at least a recognition that maybe they feel a little stuck. Where could somebody get started? I have an openness. I'm willing to make a little bit of soul work happen, but I need to start somewhere. Where would I start?
Mm-hmm. For me, what I would do is recommend, I'm a journaler, right? One of the first prompts I would do if someone's feeling stuck or if they're at a crossroads of should I stay or should I go or whatever that might be, one of the things I did that really helped me understand my own soul's path is go back to when was the very first time in my entire life that I felt joy? How young was I? When was it? Could I think about it? Did I feel? And you know what? It took a minute to go back and think, no, okay, I was 6. Was there one before that? And what was it? And it was feeding pigeons with this man who lived in my building. We lived in an apartment in Chicago and he fed the pigeons. His name was Joe. And I just always was like, felt joyful to be around Joe and feed the pigeons. And, you know, I was just, whatever that is, from an early age, I loved connecting. I loved feeding people. I still feed people. I love animals. And to go through every job, what job found me joy? What task was it? How did I love it? What work did I avoid? And just like that really helped me figure out if I'm going to have whatever, how many more years to work, how do I want to spend it? I want to spend it in the things that bring me joy. That's how, you know, and that's how I try to help people who are in the transition. Let's go back to what your first joy is. This is your one beautiful life. What are you going to do with it?
I resonate with that so much. When I first got divorced, I found myself after that divorce having that stuck feeling. Personally, I had a girlfriend who also had just been divorced, and we were both kind of in this funk, not sure where to go next with our lives. So we both landed on asking when we felt the most alive in our life, what did joy look like? So we came up with our individual lists. At the time, our lists were eating healthy, exercise, and also putting makeup on. Maybe now at 45, that's not the thing that I care about most, but I feel like just getting ready that day, you know. We also missed the scent of male cologne. So we went out and bought a bottle of male cologne and just wore it ourselves.
That's awesome.
And hers was all tied to this period where she had an ex-boyfriend with the last name Stormer, and we loved that name. So we named it the Stormer Initiative, and we just embodied all the things that we came up with on our joy list. And can I tell you, the shift in our confidence, I mean, it got us unstuck. It really did open up kind of opportunity. The turning point out of that stuckness was just living joy ourselves.
Yes. And joy is like a close cousin to gratitude, right? If joy of a step, like I just can't get there. Don't act me to be toxically happy or whatever people call that. Then start with gratitude, because gratitude will get you to joy if you're not ready for the joy leap yet. So start with gratitude. There is literally so much to be grateful for. And when we start being grateful, it acts like as a magnet and then gets you into that mindset because we see what we want to see. So I think that starting day or ending the day or both with what is it you're grateful for? The 5 things you love so much about Kelly.
Right?
Right?
The smell of his cologne.
So I think that the joy, and I think when we live in that gratitude or awe, that is awe-inspiring. I didn't understand it at the time, but boy, look at where it led. And every time I go to do something, I go, wow, I remember when I learned that 3 jobs ago. Right? Or whatever it is. And so I think being in awe of your own path can help you be more in awe of your own path forward.
Yes.
Too.
One thing I am in awe of is the amazing women in my life and the way that sisterhood shows up. This is another thing I think that with age, I appreciate even more. In my 20s, I did maybe sense a little of that competition. I think the world kind of would sometimes pit me against other women in my life, and I had a little bit more of that scarcity model. And I also took my friends for granted. I think as a society, we put so much value and emphasis on how we define family, and family being your spouse or life partner, your children, your parents, but we don't include our best friends in that. And really, I've come to believe that the family I choose is just as valuable and important as the family that I live with or the family that I was born with. I'm just curious, sisterhood for you, what does that mean? And how does that play a role in your life?
I think that we do choose our family. And I think that when something really great in our life happens or something really horrible, who are the first 5 people you call or text? That is your family. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's truly your family. When shit hits the road, right? Or when you celebrate the best feeling in your world, who do you call? That is family, whatever they're called otherwise. To me, that is, right? And yeah, yesterday I had a hard day and I got to be thinking about that. Who did I reach out to? And my sister friend here, her name is Kelly. And she owns her own business, marketing. And so her and I have been friends for 9 years now. And she's definitely on that list of people I reach out to, good or bad, and always there for me, as is my sister by blood, Heather. And also all the people that when I said I was going to start this, show up in my DM box. How can I help you? A tweet or an email, whatever it is, right? They just want to be helpful. Can I follow you? Can I share your stuff? What do you need? These are my skills. And that just feels amazing and they're women and men alike, that have come alongside of me, for sure. But here in Tulsa, I was moved here in 2016 from Madison, and I fell in with a group of yoga people that are they practice yoga, breath work, all the good stuff. And I have the best set of friends here in Tulsa. I'm very lucky. I feel very supported.
I'm curious about the younger women that are just starting out, and any thoughts or advice that you would share with them starting out in business.
Yeah, I think I don't want to speak for everybody so young,
Right.
but I just remember, like you said, when you're younger, maybe that competition seems more acute than it does when you're older and you realize that scarcity is just an illusion. So I think that, if you're young and you're starting out, to come alongside of people and maybe put aside that competition stuff. There's enough people in this world that will need leadership coaching to keep you and I and a bazillion other coaches busy forever and ever. I do not have to ever have those feelings towards you, and I won't. And it's a decision, a conscious decision to work with people, to not feel those things. It's just an icky feeling anyway. The scarcity model's untrue, so why live in it? It's so silly. We hurt ourselves. And so I would encourage these young women entrepreneurs is to lay down that competition for real and just let it go. Competition, comparison, all of it. It sucks.
What would the world look like if we not just had more women leaders in business, but also more of that abundant mindset? What could that look like for our business world?
Maybe we'd really solve the problems, right? Instead, we look at the problems of world hunger, of kids not getting school lunches or whatever the issue is. And we would actually solve the problems instead of building 12 different companies that do the same thing, that compete against each other for contracts to sell a solution to somebody. If we were really collaborative, if we were really just focused on problems, we would see solutions. I'm convinced of it because we are smart people and we know how to work hard and collaborate. So if we didn't care who got the credit, if we set down egos, if we put aside all these things and actually focused on problems, I think they would get solved. That's why wellness is not taught in medical colleges, but pharmacology is, because the problem has to exist to create a business. And we have to be critical enough to know that.
With that point in mind, I'm thinking about the connection between women in business and DEI culture and how that's under attack. Those political attacks have now, unfortunately, disrupted the work that we've been doing in corporate America to help improve in this space. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how can companies, how can leaders still push for those practices and ensure cultures that really embody diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I am so glad that you bring up dangerous topics that are messy, because this is where really the leadership rubber hits the road. Are you a leader or not? Because up until January or whatever, you led messy people and had programs in place to make sure that things were equitable and inclusive and everybody felt a sense of belonging. And now we don't. Things that have been cut, that have words that confuse people, things are out there being cut without actually looking at it because of the words that are used to describe it. So let's just outsmart that whole system. Let's focus on the individual's personal development through the coaching and the development of the person. Because when the person is developed and moves up the Maslow's hierarchy, right, to the top, they're going to be better leaders. We'll still offer it. We'll still have all these things, but we'll just call it something different because apparently it's getting cut just on name alone. So let's just be smarter leaders, because leaders, I promise you, and sometimes I clap when I say something important because there's energy in a clap and I like people to pay attention, but your workers, your people, your daughters are watching you to see what are you going to do now that you don't have to do it. Now what, leaders? Are you still doing it? Do you still care? This is it. This will define who's a leader to those of us paying attention and who is performative.
Oh my gosh. Yay. So I just want to give you a standing ovation for that. The question of, are you a leader or not? You know, I feel like in some ways, I feel lucky to have watched and been able to see the leaders that so quickly dropped their DEI initiative and clearly only viewed it as a box they were checking because they had to, and that it really wasn't a philosophy that they believed in or wanting really to provide a culture that provided diversity, equity, inclusion, but we're doing it because they had to. And so that's been telling. And those are businesses that I don't want to do business with anymore. You know, those are leaders that I've lost respect for. That's not the leadership that I embody or want to strive for. And so in some ways, we got to see who you are simply because of this. On the flip side, I've just so loved watching the leaders that are still going to practice this, that are still focused on soul leadership and are still bringing to their culture the things that are right versus the things they were doing just to check a box.
That it works. That's
right.
Why.
Exactly.
Right. And
yes.
I liked a lifetime in financial education, right? And it's the same thing. There are credit unions that check a box. Yes, we have financial education. And then they complain that it's not working because all you've done is checked a box. You haven't embodied it. You haven't integrated it. You don't really believe it. For those DEI organizations that were checking a box, Ask a Black and brown person who worked there how it felt to an organization where a box was checked versus
Right.
one that was really embodying DEI, right? Like it really, it's the feeling behind it. See what are the results. And we know that diverse teams produce better results. That is scientific. That's not an opinion.
Well, it happens to be April Fool's Day today.
Oh,
And so
Lord.
let's carry on with our full conversation. When you think about shitty leadership, what's a piece of advice that you've either been given or even a work philosophy that you used to embody that you now call bullshit on?
Early in my career, I was told just to put my head down, stay in my lane, and get the work done.
Yeah, so true. I was once pulled into a meeting room very early on in my career, and my boss at the time said to me, you're not a leader, so stop bringing your opinions like you are. So
Wow.
apparently, in my
Wow.
role, she wanted me to be quiet and stop being a leader.
When you have an opinion, she'll give it to you, dang it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So luckily, she didn't last very long. But anyway, so with that, we're kind of nearing our end. I have one final question for you. But before I get there, if you could just share with our listeners, how can they connect with you? Some steps they could take if they wanted to follow you and learn more about Soul Path leadership.
Thanks, Megan, for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I have a website at soulpathleadership.com. Also on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm Cynthia Campbell on LinkedIn as well.
Cynthia, it's been so fun today. Thank you for joining us on Becoming is Messy. Just one further question. At this very moment, so many people are in their rock bottom moment. They're living something messy right now, feeling stuck and not really sure of where to go next. When you were in the midst of your own rock bottom or really messy moment in life, what advice do you wish would have arrived then?
Somebody telling me that I wasn't alone. Because I think the despondency of the rock bottom is feeling that you are there alone and nobody else has ever felt this horrible ever in the history of all time. And it's not true. No matter what it is, most likely it's not true. We are not alone in our struggle unless we want to be. Sometimes, truthfully, as a firstborn Virgo, I like to be alone in my struggles until I'm ready to come out and ask for help. But if somebody would have spoke into me earlier, you're not alone. You do not have to do this alone. You do not have to struggle alone. And thus the 5 people you call when you are so happy or so sad. Who are those people? Know them, have them in your emergency contact list so you can get to them easily and just reach out. One last thing, I spend a lot of time outside, tons of time. In fact, your Apple Watch will tell you how much time you spend outside, and I average about 2 hours a day. It's really important to be grounded, and being outside helps me know that I'm part of something bigger and that the weather changes every day. This too will pass, and I'm just with nature. If I can cycle back into circadian rhythms, fresh air, and the bigger picture, it does wonders for me before I pick up the phone and call those friends. So that's what I would say. It always helps me. It really does, just to not feel alone. And in financial coaching, it's the same. They get on the phone, they're so overwhelmed. And by the end of the call, they just feel heard and they know they're not alone.
Cynthia, thank you so much. You so embody the words that you share. You certainly have been a leader to help me feel not so alone in my own business journey. I so appreciate you. To our messy community, please check out Cynthia's Soul Path Leadership. I'm a big champion and supporter of the work that she's leading. Also, on the next episode, we have a journal coach that will be on. Shati Refuge will be our next guest.
Thanks.
Really excited to talk about journaling and how to use that on your becoming journey. Cynthia, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you,
with
Megan.
us today.
Oh, man. I love following you. You keep shining, girl. Love you.
I love you.
All right. Bye.
Before we wrap today, I want to invite you to be part of the Becoming is Messy community. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And if there's anything that resonates with you, please leave a review. Your feedback means the world to me, and it helps other people find this community. Follow me on social media. I'd love to hear your ideas for future topics, your questions, and stories from your own messy moments. And if you're feeling inspired, check out the Becoming is Messy shop, where you can grab a mug, a t-shirt, or something else that reminds you to embrace your messy magic every single day. A huge thank you to the incredible Wolves and Sheep for providing the music for Becoming is Messy. Check them out on your favorite music streaming platform. As we close out today's episode, remember this: messy is just another word for growing. So keep showing up, keep laughing, and keep making beautifully awkward progress. Until next time, stay messy, my friends.